Hello everyone, today we're talking about appeasement and the start of World War II. Our objective question today is describe the policy used to deal with Hitler and how it inevitably led to the start of World War II. Alright, let me paint a picture for you. You're in a grocery store. You're standing in line waiting to check out, and all of a sudden the kid in front of you starts going insane. They start screaming, they're freaking out, there's snot coming out of them. They are irate because their mom has said they cannot get a treat, a little bar of candy at the end of the checkout process. And they're freaking out. They really want this Reese's Cups really, really bad. They're freaking out. And everyone starts staring at the mom. The mom starts to feel uncomfortable. And the mom says, fine, 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 you can have it. And she grabs the Reese's Cup and she throws it on the conveyor belt. And they purchase it. And the kid gets what she wants. All she had to do was throw a fit. But the mom gave in because it was easier to appease the child and give her what she wanted instead of fighting her. That's the concept behind appeasement. And that concept's going to become important later on, so keep that in mind. Now, a quick, recap of what's going on in Europe. Remember that all of Europe is suffering through the Great Depression at this point. Things are getting tough. But Hitler starts to make some moves, and he starts to do a few things that violate the Treaty of Versailles. Remember, some of the Treaty of Versailles, of course, being the treaty that ends World War I. Some of the stipulations there was that Germany demilitarized, while Hitler remilitarizes it. And while the Treaty of Versailles set the limit of active members in his military at 100,000, Hitler now has 600,000 people in his military. And he also starts to move some of these troops into this demilitarized zone referred to as the Rhineland. This was a buffer created by the Treaty of Versailles that France really pushed for because they wanted to have a buffer between themselves and Germany. They didn't want to share a border. So now that's supposed to be a demilitarized zone, and now Hitler's not only have more people in his military than he's supposed to, but he's also moving into places he's not supposed to be in. So he's technically already violating the treaty, right? Then Hitler starts to make some friends. Him and Benito Mussolini hook up and they say, hey, I'm kind of a fascist, you're a fascist, what do you say? And they sign the Rome-Berlin Axis Pact. This is an alliance between Italy and Germany, Benito Mussolini and Hitler, and it basically solidifies their alliance. Then Mussolini, now that he's, feeling kind of emboldened, now that he's friends with Hitler, starts to invade Africa. And the United States is kind of thrown off by this. Remember that we're trying to cling to isolationism. We like the idea that we're kind of, in our own little bubble, in our own little world. It's not our problem what's going on in Europe. And also remember that the Kellogg-Briand Pact is still in effect. You'll remember that the Kellogg-Briand Pact basically made war illegal. The downside of that was it was impossible to enforce, as we're seeing now. Right? So despite the fact that the Kellogg-Briand Pact is in effect, other countries are still violating that. We're also very skeptical of entering another war. Us, like almost the rest of the world, doesn't want to have another world war. And Americans in particular are pushing for isolationism and the idea of kind of ignoring everyone else so we don't rush into a war just to make other people some money. In 1935, Congress is going to pass the Neutrality Acts. This makes it illegal for us to sell arms to anyone involved in war. So this is us officially saying, listen, even if everything hits the fan, we are not helping. We are going to be neutral. All right? Next, the Spanish Civil War unfolds. I mentioned this briefly when we were talking about the rise of the dictators. Francisco Franco is one of those dictators who comes to power during this time, and he does that with the help of Hitler and Mussolini. As I mentioned before, this is a test war for the Axis powers. The Axis powers at this point being Germany and Italy. This is just a way to test out military supplies, to test out the troops, to see how effective warfare like blitzkrieg can be. And Hitler's very, very pleased with this. Francisco Franco comes to power. Spain is now a fascist nation, and this is not looking good for the other nations in Europe. Also, meanwhile, the military state of Japan is starting to attack other Asian nations, including China. and we start to send supplies and arms to China to help kind of rebuff the Japanese. FDR gives a famous speech called the Quarantine Speech, basically just saying that, these nations that are rampaging around need to be stopped. And a lot of isolationists don't really like that. They don't like the idea that this sounds almost like a mini push for war. Moving forward, remember the Rhineland? Yeah, well, Hitler decides he wants that. The Rhineland that we specifically created so they wouldn't share a border between Germany and France, he wants that. And even though he's already violated the Treaty of Versailles by building up his military, and even though he already violated by moving people in there, and even though now he's violating it by taking the Rhineland, the Ally nations don't do anything. We kind of turn a blind eye and pretend like we don't care that he's doing this. He justifies taking the Rhineland because he says that Germans need Lebensraum. Lebensraum is the German word for living room, and he's simply saying that with the Treaty of Versailles, it was so harsh, you took so much of our land that the German people literally don't have anywhere to live. We need a little bit of extra space. And this is the justification he uses, and the rest of the Allies kind of just, try to ignore it. Then Hitler says, well, we also want, the rest of Austria. So even though he's violated the treaty multiple times, including the annexation with Austria, the Allies continue to turn a blind eye. Hitler unites Austria into the German Empire. Remember, Hitler was from Austria. And now Austria is a part of the German Empire. And now Germany has grown. They have, the mainland of Germany. They have the Rhineland now, this area. Now they have Austria as well, kind of swelling up. And now we're looking at this orange area. This orange area is called the Sudetenland. And the Sudetenland has a lot of ethnic Germans living in it, which is Hitler's excuse for wanting to take it. He says, listen, it makes sense that we take the Sudetenland. There's tons of Germans that live there. We should be allowed to, incorporate that into our empire. What Hitler isn't saying is that the Sudetenland contains 66% of all of Czechoslovakia's coal and 70% of iron, which can be made into steel, that Czechoslovakia has. So by taking this narrow ribbon of land, if he does, he'll not only, absorb a bunch of more Germans, which is what he says his plan is, but he'll also be soaking up a ton of natural resources that people need to fuel war machines. So he really, really wants the Sudetenland. Now, the Allies at this point have kind of just turned a blind eye, have pretended like they don't care what's going on. At this point, we're like, maybe we should put our foot down. Maybe we should stand up to Hitler. Hitler makes it clear that he wants the Sudetenland. France and Britain vow to protect Czechoslovakia, which is the country that the Sudetenland belongs to. They meet in Munich, and it is Germany, France, and England that meet in in Munich, okay? And they come up with the Munich Pact. And the Munich Pact says, all right, Germany, you can take Sudetenland, this portion of Czechoslovakia, but after that, no more. You can't have anything else. And Hitler says, deal. So at the Munich Pact, or with the Munich Pact, Germany, France, and England, not Czechoslovakia, they were not invited to decide this about their own country, but these three nations come together and say, you can have Sudetenland if it's the last thing you're going to take. And Hitler says, okay. The Prime Minister of England at this point is a man named Neville Chamberlain. That's him at the bottom right of your screen. And when he returns to England, I'm getting ahead of myself here, when he returns to England, he truly believes he made the greatest decision possible. He truly believes that now we will have peace, that we were on the brink of war, but Hitler has come together with us, and we've made an agreement with him, and there's no way we'll have war. All right, Neville, let's see how that plays out. Now, this policy of giving Hitler exactly what he wants goes back to that, grocery store story I told you in the very beginning. It's appeasement. Appeasing someone is giving in to what they want to kind of help ease whatever trouble would come of you not giving in. So letting Hitler continue to take all of these things. First, he built up the troops, wasn't allowed to do that. Then he moved into the Rhineland, wasn't supposed to do that. Then he took the Rhineland, wasn't supposed to do that. Then he annexed Austria, wasn't supposed to do that. Then he took the Sudetenland, and we're saying, listen, dude, it's the end of the line. We can't keep doing this. And Hitler says, okay, this is appeasing him. Now, Winston Churchill, the prime minister for a majority of the war for England, is going to oppose the Munich Pact. He thinks appeasing is stupid, and he thinks that Hitler needs to be stopped now. But everyone kind of ignores Winston and pushes him to the side. This is Neville Chamberlain and Hitler shaking hands at the Munich Pact. Everyone thinks everything is great, right? Winston Churchill, very critical of Chamberlain, right? Britain and France have chose between war and dishonor. They chose dishonor. They will have war. Another great quote from Winston Churchill about appeasement. Appeasement is like feeding a crocodile, hoping he will eat you last. Now, of course, Hitler isn't done with just the Sudetenland. Even though he promised us and signed it, the Munich Pact saying he was done, he's of course not done. Because after he takes the Sudetenland, he's obviously going to take the rest of Czechoslovakia. So now, even if you're against appeasement, now would probably be a sensible time to speak up and say, okay, that's it, you violated the pact, but we don't. We continue to let Hitler do whatever he wants, and he starts to look at Poland. Poland's a very large country over here that sits between Germany and the USSR. Now, England and France have said, listen, do whatever you want with Czechoslovakia, but Poland is our legitimate friend. We're going to stand up for them. If you do anything to Poland, we're going to war. And Hitler calls their bluff. Not only that, but he also gets in cahoots with Joseph Stalin. The USSR, led by Joseph Stalin, and Germany, led by Hitler, signed the Non-Aggression Pact. The Non-Aggression Pact simply says, we're not in an alliance together, but we're promising not to attack each other. It's not really an alliance, but it's kind of like a shaky, like we're promising not to hurt each other. And the proposal comes down to, hey, let's both attack Poland. I attack from one side, you attack from another side. We'll divide it up. It'll be easy peasy. Both of us get a half. Let's do it. This is going to be great for Germany if it goes through, which it does. Because Germany's going to be able to avoid fighting a two-front war. Because even if England and France finally step up, which Hitler doesn't think we'll do, that's okay because we won't have to, or he won't have to worry about anything going on to the east of him, because Russia will be on his side, so he'll only have to worry about fighting to the west of him. All right, here are some newspapers. Non-Aggression Pact. Here are some great political cartoons of the Non-Aggression Pact. Perfect. Lovely. All right. Now, this is when the fighting for Germany begins. They start with Blitzkrieg, right? Blitzkrieg means lightning warfare. It is usually done with speed, overwhelming force, and kind of like an ambush start. It's rapid. And the reason it's lightning, right, is because it's really, really fast. It's strikingly fast. And so what happens is the Germans invade Poland on the western side of Poland. The Russians invade from the eastern side of Poland, and quickly, very fast, Poland falls. Germany and Russia, or excuse me, the Soviet Union split it up, and now Poland has been defeated. They are going to, with the method of Blitzkrieg, they're going to be able to take more land in the first week of Blitzkrieg than all of World War I. It's very rapid, it's very effective. This is partially due to all the drugs that they're taking. The Nazis especially were very dependent on drugs. Their go pills, for the most part, were meth. Later on, some of the higher-up Nazis would dabble with like heroin and stuff like that. But for the most part, meth and cocaine were great ways to get the military moving. They were able to march for days on end with enough, drugs and stuff like that. So some really interesting videos and stuff on Nazi drug use if you're interested. So anyway, the Soviet Union invades Poland from the other side, and this is what causes Britain and France to declare war on Germany. This starts World War II. Then Hitler and Stalin are going to start taking over pretty much everything. All right, so appeasement, letting people do whatever they want to hopefully avoid a conflict. Instead, we let Hitler do a bunch of stuff, get a bunch more people, get a bunch more power, get a lot more materials, and then we decided to fight him, making it even harder to defeat him. So appeasement is what is the policy we use, and it's the reason World War I begins. Also, if you want to extrapolate a little bit, technically the Treaty of Versailles is absolutely a cause for World War II, as far in the desperation and rise of Hitler. All right, that's it. Make sure to answer your objective questions. I will see you later. Bye-bye.